Appreciate it. Well, another hurricane has formed in the Atlantic, and states near the Gulf of Mexico are preparing for a hectic season. This, of course, 10 years after Hurricane Katrina hit. Weatherbell.com chief meteorologist and a good friend, Joe Bastardi, says Hurricane Katrina was not the worst-case scenario. So, Joe, what is the worst?
Well, Hurricane Katrina was not. Before we get into Katrina, I wanted to bring up 1954 on this day, 61 years ago. Hurricane Carol, August 31st, 1954, flooded Providence, Rhode Island with 12 feet of water. And just an amazing storm. When you consider that the city of New Orleans is a lot of it's below sea level, and the Gulf of Mexico is 90 degrees, to see 12 feet of water to Providence, Rhode Island at 41 degrees north and 15 feet above sea levels, you can imagine that storm surge that came up Narragansett Bay. Only the 1938 hurricane beat it, and the storms were so bad in the 50s along the eastern seaboard that the senator from Rhode Island back then, Theodore Green, after Donna came up in 1960, I think he was one of the guys that sponsored the radar fence along the East Coast so they could watch these hurricanes that were hitting.
And, you know, Joe, back then people didn't say, hey, it's because of climate change. It's because of all these gases that we're putting out. I'm just wondering, because right now, as you know, the president is up in Alaska claiming that climate change is causing these huge dislocations, also to blame for big storms like Katrina. What do you say to that?
Well, that's nonsense about it being Katrina being global warming. In 1915, 1916, there were 7 Category 3 or greater hurricanes that hit the United States. We had no way of knowing if those were Category 5s in the Gulf of Mexico. I bring that up because Katrina was a 5 in the Gulf of Mexico, but weakened to a 3 by the time it reached New Orleans. So how do we know? Who was flying around in 15, 16? Snoopy and the Red Baron?
Now, you are a great forecaster. I've known you for many years now. But President Obama and all of the people that say that we are in the midst of this climate change problem suggest that you're in such a small minority that 95% or more of all the meteorologists and scientists say that climate change is real, it is here, and it is affecting the weather.
Well, they say 95, 97% of scientists in what is supposedly a debunked study. I didn't read the study. But, you know, there's a difference between a forecaster that has to make a forecast that actually verifies and people who are speculating on stuff based on what they reanalyzed in the past. Let me tell you about Katrina. Now, on the Friday afternoon before Katrina, I was a guy that got on at 4 o'clock, I believe it was on Neil's show, said to people, get out of New Orleans. I was the same guy the year before with Ivan when the mayor was saying we need 10,000 body bags because of Ivan saying, no, it's not New Orleans stormed. New Orleans has an amazing hurricane history. 1965, Hurricane Betsy came right up the mouth of the Mississippi, put New Orleans under a tremendous amount of water, but it was not the worst case. Neither was Katrina. The worst case, Dave, is the track of the 1947 hurricane from the east-southeast. If that hits at Category 3 or 4, I think there's 15 to 20 feet of water back into New Orleans again. That is the worst case. So Katrina was not the worst case, and Katrina certainly wasn't global warming. It's part of the natural cyclical rhythm of the atmosphere.
Joe Bastardi, chief meteorologist, weatherbell.com. Joe, good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.